status of who actually goes to jail over the years, if you look at the statistics. And so what they're saying is that in order to reduce one side is saying, in order to reduce the prison population in California, 900 people come in every day, 900 people come out. You can reduce it by stopping the flow in. And so if you don't send nonviolent, non-sexual predators, non-serious offenders to state prison,
drug court is
that's one way, or you put them in county jail, then but it's cheaper and it's more effective to incarcerate people in county prisons or jails for a couple reasons. One is it's less expensive. And secondly, they are close to their community, and that's really the most important thing.
What I wonder is, does it decrease the recidivism rate?
Yes, it decreases the recidivism rate. Study after study after study have shown that the rehabilitation of people who are exposed to their communities, who are not out of their communities because they're at Pelican Bay or some other place.
Corcoran.
For women, it's Chowchilla, the middle of the state. There are programs like Get on the Bus where they can at least see their kids once a year. Women rehabilitate a whole lot faster with exposure to their children. And where are our prisons? And where do we put people?
In the middle of the San Joaquin Valley.
Got it.
Why is health services to homeless people a particularly difficult problem?
If we talk about the different kinds of homeless people and the reasons they're homeless, we really have several different groups. Chronic homeless people who've been on the street for multiple times or for a long period of time, have health issues that are just startling. The hypertension, diabetes, the prevalence of heart conditions, all of those are tremendous. The only medical attention to this point they've been able to get has been through the county safety net system, the emergency rooms, right. Two things are happening that will help replace that. One is health reform, the Affordable Care Act, which goes into place in 2014. All people will be covered even without pre-existing conditions. But even more exciting for California and for Los Angeles County is that the state applied for a waiver to begin a bridge to that point. And so in Los Angeles County, a program called Healthy Way LA has been in existence for about 9 months. And people who are uninsured, low income, and residents of the state of the county can enroll in an insurance-like program and can receive now free care under that program. And so that bridge is for now for homeless people, we have a few obstacles, like where do you send the insurance card if a person doesn't have an address? But if you look at it from a business point of view, the people who are chronically homeless cost us a huge amount of money as a society, as taxpayers, a lot more less housed than not housed. There was a study done recently called Where We Sleep that says it costs the county about $8,000 a month per chronically homeless person sleeping on the street in terms of jail and hospital costs, versus $3,000 if they are housed and have a medical home where they go for preventive care.
It seems stupid not to rent them an apartment in Hollywood or
doesn't it?
LA or wherever.
Doesn't it? So that's part of the work that I do is work to find those sites where we can put people in housing and find the funding to pay for that housing, whether it's a development of permanent supportive housing, because a lot of these folks are going to need support via case management, medical, mental health, substance use. The ideal would be permanent supportive housing for as long as they need that support, and the ideal would be that support kind of ratchets down as people get better, and that ultimately people would be able to move into what is affordable for them with or without a subsidy. But permanent supportive housing is the way we can end our homeless crisis. And we were looking at how do we build a system in Skid Row that really will serve people, and they talked about coming out of jail, and I said, tell me, in all the years you've lived in Skid Row, Can you identify some people who've not been in jail, that you know from Skid Row? They couldn't. Neither of them could come up with one person because of our public policies, because people get put in jail for jaywalking. Yeah, we arrest people.
They don't arrest
of
me
color.
for jaywalking.
Oh, they might in Skid Row.
Okay.
But they arrest everybody in Skid Row for jaywalking.
Down here on Lyons Avenue, they're not going to.
No, they're not going to. And how about Ventura Boulevard? You could cross any way, shape, or form that you're not going to get killed by a car, but nobody's going to stop you and arrest you. But I'll tell you, in Skid Row, you're going to get arrested. If you park in a meter that doesn't work, because none of the meters along San Pedro Street work, by the way, you're going to get a ticket. You have an enhanced, it's called the Safer City Initiative, and you have enhanced enforcement of the most minor kinds of things. If you look at homelessness in New York City and you look at Times Square, where you don't see homelessness anymore, and it's because it's not...
But that saves the city money, you just said.
Yeah, exactly. And they have legislation in New York that says people have a right to shelter. And so they built a big shelter, and they housed people, they sheltered people while they were trying to build or get permanent supportive housing for people. It's a myth that chronically homeless people don't want to come in, that they want to sleep on the street. I believed that until I got involved with homeless services.
Yeah, but I heard that from 3 of the 4 directors of major homeless... No, I've interviewed 5 directors of major homeless agencies, including the one I mentioned a moment ago. He's one of 5 that I've interviewed of that level.
And what did...
And 3 of them told me, you can't end homelessness because some of them don't want to come in out of the cold.
Yes, but that percentage of some is very small. I think we in homeless services, I think we all thought until recent years that it was most. It's really some, and the sum is small.
Like a fraction of a percent.
It's a fraction of a percent, because in Los Angeles, in Skid Row, with Skid Row Housing Trust and many of the agencies working together, they identified the 50 most vulnerable people, called Project 50, and offered housing to them, and every single person accepted. You know why?
Because no one wants to sleep in the street.
And because it was housing first. That was not offered as a condition that you were clean and sober. It was not offered as a condition that you lived under somebody else's rules. And it was offered in a way that gave them a place that was theirs with a key. People don't want to sleep in shelters because they have their possessions and they lose control of their possessions.
Things get stolen.
Or they have their dogs that became their only friends and they can't take them into shelter. Or they can't be there during the day. Or they have to have passes to go out at night. So you're living under rules that people who are on the street don't want to live under, those kinds of rules.
You and I don't live under those rules.
Exactly. Where our shelters are set up in a system where you have to, most of them, many of them, you have to be out at a certain time in the morning and you can't come back to a certain time in the afternoon. Our shelters are set up in a system where you sleep in a dormitory. Granted, it is shelter, and I serve on the board of a shelter, so I'm not against shelter. I am against a perpetuation and funding of that when we could be using the same funding to support either scattered site or developments that are permanent supportive housing, where people don't have a time limit, where they can actually get better, get well, or at least have a place where they can receive services.
And you're saying that if we did that, if we took 3/4 of the homeless people in LA, and over the next 2 years, we gave them that. All of them. Every single one. We knocked down a few houses, put up a bunch of big apartment complexes, and gave them all keys. Okay? With support on site. Just like you just said. That the county and the city of Los Angeles would save money.
I would agree with that, except I'll qualify the population. Of the chronically homeless people, which is a big percentage of, if we have 50,000 people on any given night in Los Angeles County that sleep on the street, a percentage of those people are chronically homeless. And yes, if we housed those folks, everybody who wanted to be housed, we would save a lot of money. But not everybody's chronically homeless. We have families, we have people who are temporarily homeless or are doubled up, where they're not actually counted as homeless under the current definition of homeless. We have vets. We have vets that might benefit more from a transitional program, which is a shorter term kind of thing, not a permanent supportive housing. And what you bring up is the whole concept of planning for discharge before people are put out on the street. If our foster care system worked from the time that a child goes into foster care, we are always planning for when they come out, either back to their families of origin or other family or adoption or age out of that system. If we're always planning with them on what happens when that time period expires, always thinking that way. Think of the difference in focus and attitude in decisions that are made with that child and for that child. If from the time a person is arrested, we're always planning for when they reintegrate into their community and helping them plan and using that time when they're incarcerated to get that GED or get that
or AA or bachelor's
or any of those things, or when you say AA, I'm thinking of Alcoholics Anonymous,
associates.
or getting the kind of drug and substance use treatment that's needed or mental health treatment that's needed, and use that time when they're incarcerated as productive time with them instead of having people sit in cells. One of the things that just drives me really nuts is looking at, I think it's Jessica's Law that is the name of it, where people who have been sex offenders when they are released, they can't live here, there, everywhere. Okay.
One of my interviewees, Bonnie Polly, she's a prison chaplain in Clark County's thing in downtown Las Vegas, and she said that's the worst thing. She set up a permanent supportive housing for sex offenders because she says there's no way that they come out of jail and they're guaranteed to reoffend.
And they're guaranteed because there's some place to sleep. If you can't live here and you can't live here and you can't live here, in LA anyway, a lot of those people are homeless and we don't know where they are. So as a citizen, as a taxpayer, I would much rather have people living where we know they are and can be monitored than homeless where we don't know where they are. And so it's unintended consequences of what started out to be public policy that was well-meaning. But every policy has intended, and a lot of them have unintended consequences. And those consequences, to me, make us less safe than the reason why they put that law went into in the beginning. The Housing Authority of the County of Los Angeles right now has a policy in place that people on parole and probation cannot live in housing that is subsidized by what's commonly called Section 8, housing choice vouchers. So if I come back from prison and my family is in a rent subsidized house or apartment, whatever they're in, I can't move in with them because they're going to lose that rental subsidy.
Or have to lie about it.
And chances of getting away with a lie on that when you've got somebody living there are pretty small. So my point is, we have public policy that
so it means that I can't live with my family.
Exactly.
It increases the chance of my reoffending.
Exactly. That, and we have all these other programs in place to help families reunify to provide a stable home for children. And now we've got a public policy that is in exact opposition to that. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
What is Zonta International?
Zonta International is an organization of business and professional women all over the world who come together to do community service and advocacy on behalf of women. And we are in, I don't even know how many countries, 160 countries, about 40,000 members worldwide. And the programs that we do are both clubs at the community level. In my community, we have an organization, a club of about 75 or 80 members. And then we also work to do service projects around the world in partnership with the United Nations and with some of the other international organizations. A couple examples of local ones. One is that we found out that the court here has no support system for domestic violence victims. And so a person, usually a male, has an attorney, has somebody with him to represent him in court. The victim doesn't have anybody representing her. If she does, it's from the DA's office, and they are so overworked they don't have time to give a woman like that the emotional support. And so we've put into place in our court system here an advocacy program working in partnership with the Domestic Violence Center, where we have trained volunteers who are in court who will work with that victim, who might even drive that victim to a neighboring court, let's say in San Fernando or Van Nuys if the case is not here, and be the advocate for that person and give her the emotional support. Another project that we have done over the years is a program called Life Forward, and it's for women who have not had the opportunity to go to school or are uncomfortable, let's say, going to the community college, who want a safe environment where they can learn things like financial skills. How do you budget? How do you plan for savings? How do you get your credit back if you've lost your credit, either through divorce or something else? How do you do a resume? How do you do a job search? How do you go on an interview? What kind of attire should you be wearing to a job interview? Those kinds of life skills. And so we do those once a month for women in the community who don't have the courage to go to the community college
Because
that
they're
takes
traumatized.
courage. They're traumatized, or they've had no experience in a university or a college and they're scared to go to the campus. So we help give them the confidence and do kind of a mentor program of doing those kinds of workshops. So those are two of the local ones.
Please give us an example of the international efforts that you support.
The international projects are determined every 2 years when the new international president comes into office and presents to a body of the membership these programs, and then they're voted on. And they're projects that we think can be self-sustaining.